Rigging crane material handling. Purpose. Various types of cranes, hoists, and rigging devices are used at Plaas Incorporated for lifting and moving materials. Plaas Incorporated's policy is to maintain a safe workplace for its employees. Therefore, it cannot be overemphasized that only qualified and licensed individuals shall operate these devices. The safety rules and guidance in this program apply to all operations at Plaas Incorporated that involve the use of cranes and hoists installed in or attached to buildings, and to all company employees, supplemental labor, and subcontractor personnel who use such devices. Responsibilities. The program administrator, this person is responsible for conducting training for all crane and hoist operators, issuing licenses to crane and hoist operators, periodically verifying monthly tests and inspection reports, interpreting crane and hoist safety rules and standards. Foreman. These people are responsible for ensuring that employees under their supervision receive the required training and are certified and licensed to operate the cranes and hoists in their areas. Providing training for respective crane and hoist operators. This training must be conducted by a qualified designated instructor who is a licensed crane and hoist operator. Evaluating crane and hoist trainees using the crane safety checklist and submitting the qualification request form to the safety office to obtain the operator's license. Ensuring that hoisting equipment that is inspected and tested monthly by a responsible individual, and that rigging equipment is inspected annually. Crane and hoist operators. These people are responsible for operating hoisting equipment safely, conducting functional tests prior to using the equipment, selecting and using rigging equipment appropriately, having a valid operator's license on their person while operating cranes or hoists, participating in the medical certification program as required. Engineering Maintenance Operations Department. These people are responsible for performing annual maintenance and inspection of all Plaas Incorporated cranes and hoists that are not covered by a program with maintenance responsibility, conducting periodic and special load tests of cranes and hoists, maintaining written records of inspections and tests, and providing copies of all inspections and test results to facility managers and building coordinators who have cranes and hoists on file. Inspecting and load testing cranes and hoists following modification or extensive repairs, example, a replaced cable or hook or structural modification. Scheduling a non-destructive test and inspection for crane and hoist hooks at the time of periodic load test, and testing and inspecting before use new replacement hooks and other hooks suspected of having been overloaded. The evaluation, inspection, and testing may include but are not limited to visual, dye penetrant, and magnetic particle techniques referenced in ASME B30.10, hooks inspection and testing. Maintaining all manuals for cranes and hoists in a central file for reference. Safe operating requirements. All workers who use any Plaas Incorporated crane or hoist shall have an operator's license. The company issues licenses for authorized employees who have been specially trained in crane and hoist operations and equipment safety. Crane and hoist operators. To be qualified as a crane and hoist operator, the candidate shall have received hands-on training from a licensed qualified crane and hoist operator designated by the candidate's supervisor. Upon successful completion of training, the licensed crane and hoist operator and the candidate's supervisor will fill out and sign the qualification request form and crane safety checklist and send them to the safety office for approval. The candidate will be issued a license upon approval by the safety manager. Crane and hoist operators must renew their license every 3 years by satisfying the requirements described above. Crane and hoist safety design requirements. Following are the design requirements for cranes and hoists and their components. The design of all commercial cranes and hoists shall comply with the requirements of ASME ANSI B30 standards and Crane Manufacturers Association of America standards, CMMA-70 and CMMA-74. All cranes and hoist hooks shall have safety latches. Hooks shall not be painted or repainted if the paint previously applied by the manufacturer is worn. Crane pendants shall have an electrical disconnect switch or button to open the mainline control circuit. Cranes and hoists shall have a main electrical disconnect switch. This switch shall be in a separate box that is labeled without lockout capability. Cranes, bridges, and hoist monorails shall be labeled on both sides with a maximum capacity. Each hoist hook block shall be labeled with the maximum hook capacity. Directional signs indicating northwest, southeast shall be displayed on the bridge underside, and a corresponding directional label shall be placed on the pendant. A device such as an upper limit switch or slip clutch shall be installed on all building cranes and hoists. A lower limit switch may be required when there is insufficient hoist rope on the drum to reach the lowest point. All cab and remotely operated bridge cranes shall have a motion alarm to signal bridge movement. All newly installed cranes and hoists, or those that have been extensively repaired or rebuilt structurally, shall be load tested at 125% capacity prior to being placed into service. If an overloaded device is installed, a load to the test to the adjusted setting is required. Personnel baskets and platforms suspended from any crane shall be designed in accordance with the specifications in 29 CFR 1926.550G. General safety rules. Operators shall comply with the following rules while operating the cranes and hoist. Do not engage in any practice that will divert your attention while operating the crane. Respond to signals only from the person who is directing the lift or any appointed signal person. Obey a stop signal at all times, no matter who gives it. Do not move a load over people. People should not be placed in jeopardy by being under suspended load. Also, do not work under a suspended load unless the load is supported by blocks, jacks, or a solid footing that will safely support the entire weight. Have a crane or hoist operator remain at the controls or lock open and tag the main electrical disconnect switch. Ensure that the rated load capacity of the crane's bridge, individual hoist, or any sling or fitting is not exceeded. Know the weight of the object being lifted or use a dynamometer or load cell to determine the weight. Check that all controls are in the off position before closing the mainline disconnect switch. If spring-loaded reels are provided to lift pendants clear off the work area, ease the pendant up into the stop to prevent damaging the wire. Avoid side pulls. These can cause the hoist rope to slip out of the drum groove, damaging the rope or destabilizing the crane or hoist. To prevent shock loading, avoid sudden stops or starts. Shock loading can occur when a suspended load is accelerated or deaccelerated and can overload the crane or hoist. When completing an upward or downward motion, ease the load slowly to a stop. Equipment must not be assembled or used unless ground conditions are firm, drained, and graded to a sufficient extent so that in conjunction, if necessary, with the use of supporting materials, the equipment manufacturer's specifications for adequate support and degree of level of the equipment are met. The manufacturer's procedures and prohibitions must be complied with and when assembling and disassembling the equipment. The disassembly of equipment must be directed by a competent and qualified person. The work zone shall be identified by demarcating boundaries such as flag and range limiting devices, or defining the work zone as 360 degrees around the equipment up to a maximum working radius. The hazard assessment must determine if any part of the equipment could get closer than 20 feet to a power. If it is determined that any part of the equipment load line or load could get closer than 20 feet to a power line, then at least one of the following requirements must be taken. Number 1, ensure the power lines have been de-energized and visibly grounded. Number 2, ensure that no part of the equipment load line or load gets closer than 20 feet to the power line. 14. A competent person must conduct a visual inspection of equipment prior to each shift. The inspection must consist of observation for apparent deficiencies. Some inspection items shall include control mechanisms, pressurized lines, hooks and latches, wire rope, electrical apparatus, tires when used, and ground conditions. Operational rules. Pre-operational test. At the start of each work shift, operators shall do the following steps before making lifts with any crane or hoist. Test the upper limit switch. Slowly raise the unloaded hook block until the limit switch trips. Number 2, visually inspect the hook, load lines, trolley, and bridges as much as possible from the operator's station. In most instances, this will be on the floor of the building. If provided, test the lower limit switch. Test all direction and speed controls for both bridge and trolley travel. Test all bridge and trolley limit switches where provided if operation will bring the equipment in close proximity to the limit switches. Test the pendant emergency stop. Test the hoist brake to verify there is no drift without a load. If provided, test the bridge movement alarm. Lock out and tag out for repair any crane or hoist that fails any of the above tests. Moving a load. Center the hook over a load to keep the cables from slipping out of the drum grooves and overlapping, and to prevent the load from swinging when it is lifted. Inspect the drum to verify that the cable is in its grooves. Use a tag line when loads must traverse long distances or must otherwise be controlled. Manila rope may be used for tag lines. Plan and check the travel path to avoid personnel and obstructions. Lift the load only high enough to clear the tallest obstruction in the travel path. Start and stop slowly. Land the load where the move is finished. Choose a safe landing. Never leave suspended loads unattended. If an emergency where the crane or hoist has become inoperative, if a load must be left suspended, barricaded post signs in the surrounding area under the load and for all four sides. Lock, open, and tag the crane's or hoist's main electrical disconnect switch. Whenever there is a safety concern, the operator must have the authority to stop and refuse to handle loads until a qualified person has determined that safety has been assured. Safety devices. Safety devices are required to be on all equipment and must be in proper working order before operations begin. If any of the devices are not in proper working order, the equipment must be taken out of service and operations must not resume until the device is working properly again. Examples of safety devices may include crane level indicator, boom stops, jib stops, foot pedal brake, locks, horns, etc. Manufacturer procedures. All manufacturer procedures applicable to the operational functions of equipment, including its use with attachments, must be complied with. Operator procedures. The operator shall have access to procedures applicable to the operation of the equipment. Procedures include rated capacity, load charts, recommended operating speeds, special hazard warnings, instructions, and operator's manual. Modifications. The manufacturer must approve all modifications, additions in writing. As registered professional engineer must be qualified with respect to the equipment involved and must ensure the original safety factor of the equipment is not reduced. Parking a crane or hoist. Remove all slings and accessories from the hook. Return the rigging device to the designated storage racks. Raise the hook at least 2.1 meters, 7 feet above the floor. Store the pennant away from aisles and work areas or raise at least 2.1 meters, 7 feet above the floor. Place the emergency stop switch or push button in the off position. Rigging. General rigging safety requirements. Only select rigging equipment that is in good condition. All rigging equipment shall be inspected annually. Defective equipment is to be removed from service and destroyed to prevent inadvertent reuse. The load capacity limit shall be stamped and affixed to all rigging components. Plaas Incorporated's policy requires a minimum safety factor of 5 to be maintained for wire rope slings. The following types of slings shall be rejected or destroyed. Nylon slings with abnormal wear, torn stitching, broken or cut fibers, discoloration or deterioration. Wire rope slings with kinking or crushing, bird caging or other distortions, evidence of heat damage, cracks, deformation or worn end attachments. 6 randomly broken wires in a single rope lay, 3 broken wires in one strand of rope, hooks open more than 15% at the throat, hooks twisted sideways more than 10 degrees from the plane of the unbent hook, alloy steel chain slings with cracked, bent, or elongated links or components, cracked hooks, shackles, eye bolts, turnbuckles, or other components that are damaged or deformed. 2. Rigging a load. Do the following when rigging a load. Determine the weight of the load. Do not guess. Determine the proper size for slings and components. Do not use manila rope for rigging. Make sure that shackle pins and shouldered eye bolts are installed in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations. Make sure that ordinary shoulderless eye bolts are threaded in at least 1.5 times the bolt diameter. Use safety hoist ring swivel eyes as a preferred substitute for eye bolts whenever possible. Pad sharp edges to protect slings. Remember that machinery foundations or angle iron edges may not feel sharp to the touch, but could cut into rigging when under several tons of load. Wood, tire, rubber, or other pliable materials may be suitable for padding. Do not use slings, eye bolts, shackles, or hooks that have been cut, welded, or brazed. Install wire rope clips with the base only on the live and on the U-bolt only on the dead end. Follow the manufacturer's recommendations for the spacing for each specific wire size. Determine the center of gravity and the balance of load before moving it. Initially lift the load only a few inches to test the rigging and balance. Crane overloading. Cranes or hoists shall not be loaded beyond their rated capacity for normal operations. Any crane or hoist suspected of having been overloaded shall be removed from service by locking, open, and tagging the main disconnect switch. Additionally, overloaded cranes shall be inspected, repaired, load tested, and approved for use before being returned to service. Working at heights on cranes or hoists. Anyone conducting maintenance or repair on cranes or hoists at heights greater than 1.8 meters 6 feet shall use fall protection. Fall protection should also be considered for heights less than 1.8 meters. Fall protection includes safety harnesses that are fitted with a lifeline and securely attached to a structural member of the crane or building, or properly secured safety nets. Use of a crane as a work platform should only be considered when conventional means of reaching an elevated work site are hazardous or not possible. Workers shall not ride a moving bridge crane without approval from the safety manager, which shall specify the following as a minimum. Personnel shall not board any bridge crane unless the main disconnect switch is locked and tagged open. Personnel should not use bridge cranes without a permanent platform catwalk as work platforms. Bridge catwalks shall have a permanent ladder access. Personnel shall ride seated on the floor of the permanent platform with approved safety handrails, wear safety harnesses attached to the designated anchors, and be in clear view of the crane operator at all times. Operators shall lock and tag open the main or power disconnect switch on the bridge catwalk when the crane is parked. Hand signals. Signals to the operator shall be in accordance with the standard hand signals unless voice communications equipment, telephone, radio, or equivalent is used. Signals shall be discernible and audible at all times. Some special operations may require addition to the modification of the basic signals. For all such cases, these special signals shall be agreed upon and thoroughly understood by both the person giving the signals and the operator, and shall not be in conflict with the standard signals. A signal person must be provided for the following situations. The point of operation is not in full view of the operator. The view is obstructed when the equipment is traveling. The operator or the person handling the load determines it is necessary due to site-specific concerns. Inspection, maintenance, and testing. All tests and inspections shall be conducted in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations. Monthly tests and inspections. All in-service cranes and hoists shall be inspected monthly and the results documented. Defective cranes and hoists shall be locked and tagged out of service until all defects are corrected. The inspector shall initiate corrective action by notifying the facility manager or building coordinator. Annual inspections. The maintenance department shall schedule and supervise or perform annual preventative maintenance, PM, and annual inspections of all cranes and hoists. The annual PM and inspection shall cover hoisting and lowering mechanisms, trolley travel or monorail travel, bridge travel. Limit switches and locking and safety devices, structural members, bolts or rivets, sheaths and drums, parts such as pins, bearings, shafts, gears, rollers, locking devices, and clamping devices, brake system parts, linings, pawls, and ratchets, load, wind, and other indicators over their full image, gasoline, diesel, electric, or other power plants, chain drive sprockets, crane and hoist hooks, electrical apparatus such as controller, contactors, limit switches, and push-button stations, wire rope, hoist chains. Load testing. Newly installed cranes and hoists shall be load tested at 125% of the rated capacity by designated personnel. Slings shall have appropriate test data when purchased. It is the responsibility of the purchaser to ensure that the appropriate test data are obtained and maintained. Re-rated cranes and hoists shall be load tested to 125% of the new capacity if the new rating is greater than the previous rated capacity. Fixed cranes or hoists that have major modifications or repairs shall be load tested to 125% of the rated capacity. Cranes and hoists that have been overloaded shall be inspected prior to being returned to service. Personnel platforms, baskets, and rigging suspended from a crane or hoist hook shall be load tested initially and then retested annually thereafter at each new job site. All cranes and hoists with a capacity of greater than 22 kilograms, 3 tons, should be load tested every 4 years to 125% of the rated capacity. Cranes and hoists with a lesser capacity should be load tested every 8 years to 125% of the rated capacity. All mobile hoists should be load tested at intervals to be determined by the manager of safety. Records. The safety manager shall maintain all records for cranes, hoist, and rigging equipment.